Hi, it's Chris from Epix here. This is a short tutorial on how to set up a new survey or checklist, and also how to edit existing surveys within the system. Now, this particular tutorial does rely on the fact that you will have access to the Setup Surveys option, which is normally found under your Setup menu here, and in my system it is captioned as surveys. So if you don't have this, you'll need to request that from your line manager or whoever it is that approves that sort of thing within your organisation, and get that requested from us, and we can add this item to your setup menu. We'll begin with this tutorial and set up a new survey. So if we go to the setup menu and press surveys, we've got the option at the top here for new entry, so we'll click on that. And this launches the first screen of the survey setup. Beginning on this first step of the survey wizard, this is the creation of the inspection, and the inspection object is really the name of the survey. So for the example that we're going to do today, I'm going to set up a really basic pat testing survey for electrical works. So I shall just simply call that pat testing. The section on the right here, the table of related templates and the trades that's listed here, this is the type of survey that you're creating and also which trades are going to receive it. So the ones that are labelled with the type of survey, these will appear as part of a job, and if you tick the trade types here, then the engineers or operatives that have that trade type on that job, they will get this survey. So this particular survey will be an electrical survey, so I will give that to the electrician. That means that only electricians will see this on their device, so the plumbers won't be bothered with the pat testing survey. Just worth mentioning is the additional types here, the risk assessment and the daily checklist and so on. These are special types of survey. So the risk assessment appears at a different point within the mobile app in the job process. This appears before the engineer begins work. So as they arrive on site, they're presented with a risk assessment screen, and that does require a specific risk assessment to be turned on the mobile app. So if that's something you want to explore, then give us a shout and we'll help you with that. Similarly, the daily checklist, this is another special one. This appears at the beginning of the working day. So this requires the clock on, clock off function. So as the engineer clocks onto their device first thing in the morning, at the beginning of their shift, they're then presented with a daily checklist. And usually a lot of our customers use this for van checks and that sort of thing, the sort of thing that would happen just once per day. So we've just ticked the electrical survey here, so we would now press save. Now the green message indicates that the inspection object, the survey, has been created, and this is the screen where we add our actions and tasks. Now the action and the task, this is the actual survey content itself, the questions and the responses and the things that you're going to be asking the operatives. The action area here, this is usually determines the section of the survey. So if you were creating just a very basic few checks that you wanted to carry out, and the original, say, paper-based system that you might have been using literally just had 5 questions on it, then you would only really bother with the one action, and that would be whatever that question set was. But if you'd got a survey that was broken down into different areas on a page, where you had general checks to start with, and then maybe some in-depth checks, and then a summary section as well, you might have 3 separate actions, and then within each action you'd have your tasks. So in your general details you'd have the general tasks, then you might have the additional details with some additional tasks. And these will just simply be broken down into different sections on the mobile app for the engineer, but also when the survey comes back to the office, you can then see them on the printout in their separate sections as well. So in our example of pat testing, we would be completing a set of questions or some responses for each item within the residence that we're pat testing. So I'm going to call the action section pat testing appliance. And the sequence order of 1, this influences where it appears in the list of actions that you're looking at on the mobile device. So the 1 would indicate that this will appear at the top of the list. Show by default means that when you go into the surveys, this action will automatically show all of the time. So I'm going to make that ticked on this example because I want to see this one whenever we go in. The tasks are the questions that you're going to ask the operative, and the possible answers are the responses that you're expecting. Now, the possible answers could be a list of items that you want them to select. It could also be a set of units of measure, or it could also just simply be a field type that indicates what sort of data you're expecting them to put in there. So what I'll do is I'll set up a survey now for you where you can see some examples of what those could be. Now, those aren't the full list, so if you do have any questions about what could go in here additional to what you're going to see in this video, then do let us know. So we'll begin with a appliance reference. So the appliance reference is likely to be a barcode perhaps, or it could just simply be a number that you're going to give the appliance. So the possible answers in this case, I'm going to give it a text as a possible answer. And what that will do is that will give the operative a text box in which they can type their information. The rest of the information over here, this is all additional setup information about the individual question that you're asking. The allow non-positive, the description for that will be covered in our PDF manual to this. It's not relevant to this survey, and 99% of the surveys you ever create will not use this. So we'll ignore that for now. The replace tick box, this will replace the answer with the last selected one. So if you had a list of appliance types in this field, for example, and your operative selected the first in the list, then they selected the second, the replace tick box being ticked like this would then just simply mean that the second item they selected is the one that goes in the field. It will select one only, and they can cycle through selecting as many as they want, but it will only ever place the last one in the answer. The required tick box means it's a mandatory question. They have to complete the question before they can move on. Important means that we're flagging this to be an important answer to an important question. And what that does is it flags those answers on the dashboard widget that you can add in on your dashboard if you would like. The default is a default answer, so you can define an answer that will always be present, and it's down to the operative to either remove that or edit it as appropriately for whichever the question is. And finally, the sequence order, that is the sequence that these appear top to bottom on the mobile app, and also when you print them out, that's where they will appear in order. So sequence order 1 will be at the top, and you'd simply work down. Once you've done, you press add. Now once you've pressed add, you've got an edit pencil here, which if we press that, we can then go back and make some changes. And we also have the delete button, so you can delete the task as well. I'm going to now add in a selection of different types of questions with different possible answers, so you can see how these can be set up and what might work for you. So as we can see, I've now added a selection of questions, all with different sorts of possible answer. So we've got a couple of items here that are text. Those present the operative with a text field that they can manually type free text into. The location question here, the responses that have been separated with the semicolon, this will provide the operative with a list of the locations in the residence that they're going to do this appliance test. So they will get a list where they can select these items. Similarly, with the class, they can select these items. The number will present the operative with the numeric keypad on their device rather than the full QWERTY keyboard. The visual check question with the yes, no, similar to the pass and fail, what the operative will get here is they'll get a button labelled yes and a button labelled no, and they'll also get a pass and a fail button, so they can select very quickly just using a button which option they would like. Once you've finished adding all your tasks to the action or the section of the survey, you can then press continue, and as we can see, the action and tasks have now been saved. These are now here in this table below, so that's our first action, and if we click on the blue triangle for the sub-report here, this will then reveal the questions and the possible answers listed here. So if you did want to go back and make any changes to this, you can do by pressing the edit button, and of course if you did want to delete this complete section here from the survey, you could do so by pressing delete. I'm going to add an additional action or section to this survey now, and this is for any additional comments or any additional findings that they might want to record. So I shall call this section additional comments. This will appear at sequence order 2, so below our pat testing, and I want it to show by default so it's always there when they open this survey. In here I would like simply 2 questions, so then any additional comments that they might have, the possible answers to this would be a text field, and then finally any photos if required, because one of the possible answers that we can have is photo, and that will present the operative with the camera icon where they can then launch the camera and take some photographs within the survey. So let's add that, and once we're done, press continue. So now you can see we've got 2 sections or 2 actions, and then within each of those we have our tasks or questions that we're going to ask our operative. If we now press continue on the top right hand side, we can now see that that has now been saved and everything is ready to use. What I thought I'd do now is show you how this survey will look on the mobile app. So I've given myself a test job where the job description is pat testing, and when we progress through into the job, of course this is the screen where you can take your photographs of the work you're doing and so on. But once we move from this screen and press next, we land on the survey screen. So as you can see, we've got 3 surveys to choose from here, one of which is our pat testing survey that we've just created in the back office. So if I click onto this survey item here, you can see in here we've got the 2 actions that we created, the appliance for pat testing and then the additional comments. So of course we can click into those, we can answer the questions. So just to briefly show you what these look like in correspondence to what we set up in the back office. So the appliance reference, this was a text field, so as we click into there we then are presented with the keyboard where we can then free type as much as we like. The item description, again we click into that field and again we can free type, so I'm just going to say that that's a kettle. The location, here we have a pick list, and if we remember from the back office, this was all the different areas within a property that you could have chosen. So you can scroll through that list, and as we press an option, if we then change that and went say for the dining room, you'll notice that the kitchen has gone. So if we go back to the kitchen, we can only select one, and that's because replace was ticked in the back office. So once we've selected, we can press save. Same again down here. And our fuse rating in amps I've specified as a number field. So when I click into there, instead of getting the full QWERTY keyboard, I only get the numeric keypad. The visual check, and also if we look down here for the pass or fail, we had 2 options, which was yes and no and pass or fail, so we get buttons for those. So again with this one here, if we press yes or no, we can only cycle between the 2 because replace was ticked, and also in the pass we can press there as well. These 2 both present you with the numeric keypad as well. Once you're done, you press the back key to take you back to the survey items, and once you've carried out the survey you get the green tick to say you've done that. We also added an additional comments section, so we can click on there and we had the free type text box and also the camera icon to take any photographs if you wanted to. Also at the bottom of this page, which is really important for certain types of surveys, pat testing being one of those, you can add in further items. So obviously we've just done a kettle appliance. If we wanted to repeat this process for say a water heater, you could do that by pressing the add button, choosing the pat testing appliance to add back in, because you're going to add another appliance to this survey, you press add, and we go back, and now we can see we've got an additional section here that has not been completed yet. So if we click into there, again we're presented with a blank survey that we can then complete for the appliance that we're looking at now. And you can repeat that using the add button for as many actions that you want to add into this survey. And of course, once you're done on the surveys, you simply press next to move on. And finally, to show you how that survey then appears in the back office, this is the job sheet for the job that we just completed using the mobile app. And one of the sections on our job sheet here is the job inspections. And so we can see here that we've done 2 surveys, the first being the risk assessment that would have been carried out as the operative arrived on site, and the second is the one that we just did as part of this video, which is the pat testing survey. So you can press on the print button here, and that will load the PDF file of the responses to that survey. So you'll get the details of the job, and you'll also get the responses and the questions that you did here. Now, bearing in mind that there are sometimes bespoke printing layouts that you can have, if that's something that you do require, then do get in touch and we can look to see if we can recreate any layouts for surveys that you might have. Of course, as with all our videos, any questions that you might have regarding the setup of the surveys and how you might go about best laying them out for the operative to complete, then don't hesitate to give us a shout.